Good evening, everyone. Alex Elfand from Salty Dogs. I'm the education coordinator, talking to you tonight from our favorite haunt in Falmouth Harbor and Antigua. Won't be here much longer as we start heading north. And tonight, I'm really happy again to have Nick Olson and the PredictWind team come talk to us about the PredictWind tool set. And in particular, tonight Nick's going to be talking about just kind of giving you an overview again of the features. For those of you who use it a lot, you may know all the ins and outs. Others may be using it the way they're used to using it and may not be taking advantage of everything that's there. If there's anything in particular that you want to get covered that we don't talk about, please bring that up at the end and Nick will happily do that. And with that, I turn it over to Nick Olson.
Thanks very much, Alex. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here again. My favorite group is Salty Dog. So we'll jump straight into it. And as Alex mentioned, I asked what it was that we wanted to talk about today, and Alex sort of said that there's a lot of new features that we do. Will have done, or even in recent times that, he said even as a heavy PredictWind user, he's not always, 100% up to speed with what they are. So we will start at the beginning with the basics, and but yeah, it will be quite feature based, and obviously this is a webinar about PredictWind, so it's all PredictWind based. I'll try not. I'm here to try and educate, not sell. So I hope that's the way that it all comes across. So obviously, since we did this, would have done one of these last year. The world has Satcom's world and has changed a lot. With Starlink, which has been amazing, and looks to continue to be really awesome and give cruisers better comms. So with those new comms, we probably need to talk about how we use our application. When you in a port or at a marina, or you're just sitting around and you've got your Starlink on, I would be using the PredictWind app or the website. And that's got all the information there, and it's all web-based, and it's a lot of information in the PredictWind app. When you go and you're doing crossings, I would still recommend, regardless of your Satcoms, that you use the offshore app. The reason being is that, and at any time, if you're one of those people that needs to turn your Starlink off all the time because of power draw, the offshore app saves all your data offline. And so that's really good to have that if you want to go back and visit things rather than reloading all the time. So the PredictWind app won't save all your data offline. The offshore app, as it always has, saves all your data offline. So you download everything, whether it's just wind maps, routing, observations, whatever it is that you're looking at, everything that you load into the offshore app stays there until you replace it. So yeah, definitely on passage, I would recommend using the offshore app, and any time that you want to keep that data rather than having to reload it. So that's really sort of a specific thought around your connection with your Starlink. And then if you're not using Starlink, if you don't want that for whatever reason, and you're using Iridium comms, or as you should all have backup comms, you should know how to use the offshore app with your Iridium or Inmarsat comms. And obviously that's quite a different data set that you download, because you're limited with your bandwidth. So knowing how to use that is pretty important. We hear lots of stories about Starlink stopping for whatever reason, and so definitely you want to have your backup comms. So while we're talking about comms, actually, I'll just share this one. So we do have a page, a Starlink page on our website. I'll just get Kieran to share that in the chat. And there's some really, if you haven't thought about it, there's some really interesting stuff in there about backup comms. It's definitely something that we're pretty strong on, is your safety and being able to communicate regardless of where you're at. Okay, so we're on the comms path, and probably this really starts into new features. We've had this product called the Data Hub out for a while now, and as you see here, monitor, record, share all your onboard data sources. So whatever comms you are using, if you're using Starlink, if you're using a Go Exec, if you're using an original Go, and even if you're just using LTE, I would recommend having one of these. It can do your tracking, and if you have it connected to an exec, it does your tracking. A lot of people, we have a plan for the exec now, which is that we have a backup plan. I should probably go look at those in a bit. That are cheaper, have a low monthly rate, and so that you can have that connected all the time, and it can update your polars, it can do your tracking, just all in the background. And so if you're turning your Starlink off, at night to save power, and especially when you're underway, this will keep updating your track, knowing, having people know where you are, especially when you're in the rallies, they like to know where you are. And having an up-to-date track is really important. If things happen, people know where you are. Having a 12-hour-old track from when you last turned your Starlink on is not ideal. If you do that and you don't have other comms to track with, the Data Hub will save all those tracks and upload them when you connect. But as I say, having a 12-hour-old tracking position is not ideal. So that's the tracking stuff. And so you can, on your tracking page, it will show you wind speed and direction. Because it plugs into your NMEA, the position's accurate, and and so people know where you are, which is a nice feature. So while we're talking about features, this is actually a brand new feature that we have put in, and this is an underway feature or planning feature. And so you can see AIS on your chart plotter or any other device that you have on board. So you have your iPad with some nav software that can show AIS targets. So it will show all your local targets from your transponder, and that your VHF is collecting. So whether that's 2 miles, 5 miles, up to 20, it'll show all the that's your regular normal AIS. And then what we are doing from there is, this is definitely a nice feature to have with your Starlink, is that we're pinging our servers all the time, and we're getting all the satellite and terrestrial positions outside of your target range. And so those, what we call over the horizon targets, can be seen on your chart plotter or whatever other nav tool that you're using. So the idea there is that just to give you more warning and let you know what's around in an easy way. Yes, you could go online and look at our AIS, but this is nice that you can have it pinging to your chart plotter in particular. And so it will either connect through Wi-Fi, or if with your chart plotter, if that's plugged into your NMEA backbone and your Data Hub is, it will actually feed it directly in there. I think it's really cool, and quite a unique feature. And again, I think this is probably in the last year, polar updating. So what this will do is it will look at your polars and look at your NMEA data, and however you're sailing, it will adjust your polars over time to reflect how you sail. So whether you're the best sailor in the world and you're always sailing faster than your polars, or you just sail with your head sail all the time and your polars aren't really that accurate because the design was for it to be, sailed by a full crew and there's just two of you, or however, it will adjust your polars to how you sail. And so that's a really nice way of getting your polars accurate. For anyone that doesn't know what polars are, that is what we use in the weather routing to know how fast your boat is going in any given conditions. And so having that information there and knowing having an accurate polar means that when you do your weather routing is more accurate. So it's as important as having good weather modeling as having accurate polars. So having that automatically update for you is a bit of a game changer really for us, just having that all sorted. And not, I'll show you a bit later what the polar tables look like, and some of you might be very happy to have this happening automatically for you. The anchor alert connects into the data hub. We're still testing that, but the idea behind this, I know there's lots of anchor alerts out there on your phone, but the idea is that the data hub is always powered on because it's connected to your boat. And if you have your Starlink on or an exec on and you go off the boat, it can let you know if your boat goes out of your range, that you've set. So your parameters set. So if you're going, on land and you want to be, warned about, whether your boat's moving or not, a very nice way to monitor it. Yeah, as I said, we can share all our stuff on board. So can spit it out by Wi-Fi, and as for those over the horizon AIS targets into your chart plotter. I mean, all this other stuff should be going into your chart plotter from your N2K network anyway, but we can broadcast it to, Aquamaps or Navionics or iNavX or whatever it is that you're using. Having that, being able to broadcast that onto your devices is pretty nice. Firewall, I have convinced our developers to do a firewall for Starlink so that when you go onto mobile priority data, that we can have a profile there that you can turn on that will stop all your devices from accessing your data and chewing up all your data before you've even left the dock. So that's going to be pretty nice. Optimized email and messaging. This is if you are on an exec or a Go, you can use this optimized email. Yeah, it's pretty much it. It's not an expensive device, and they're pretty popular now. Lots of people are using them, and it does a very nice job with your with whatever connection you're using. I should have mentioned right at the start that we do have Karen McMaster, who's actually the head of our support team. She's in the chat, and so she's hopefully answering questions in the chat. And at the end, any questions that we have, I'll come back and look at that. So people keep popping up on the chat there. I want to go to a different page here. I mentioned before about backups, and I'll just super quickly talk about that. And I want to talk about the plans more than anything. So, the exec as a backup, you can talk through it. So if you have to jump in a life raft, you can make a call from the unit. It's IP65 rated. And we have plans around that. These are emergency plans here. So that's means that you can do your tracking and whatnot through that. As I mentioned, if you're turning your Starlink off, and it's ready to go if you need it in an emergency. So you can take that device with you and you can do voice calls if you needed to, coordinate a rescue. So yeah, that's definitely something that I would be looking at if I'm going offshore. So really, that's all fantastic stuff. And the data hub is cool. And as I say, it doesn't matter what connection you're on. It's really, really good. But what our primary business and what we do and our focus is forecasting and tools and how to keep give you the information to keep yourselves safe when you're doing crossings, when you're at anchor, basically while you're out on the water. We want to give you the tools so that you can understand the weather and interpret it better than just looking at a wind map. We have all warnings and obviously your routing and various stuff around that. So in the start of that is we have the best forecast models. There is a lot of forecast models out there, and we put a lot of effort into curating what we offer, and around that we do have high resolution models and then global models. And so what I mean by high resolution is the granularity of the model. So if your weather model, the weather models are different. They all have different physics in them, and they'll give different outputs. Ideally, the outputs line up, and that's when we have more confidence in the forecast. If all of the models that you're looking at say different things, then we have less confidence in the forecast. And what we do in that situation is we might look at which model was doing the best job now. So when I talk about, I said that resolution, more granularity, like more detail, so that'll pick up your thermal breeze, your funneling in between islands and stuff like that, and your lee effects. That is in a high resolution model, you will see that. So we have our two proprietary models, which the PWG and the PWE, their strength is short term. So, and by that I mean today and tomorrow. That's their strength, and especially in that high resolution state. So that 1 kilometer resolution and even the 8K, but definitely in the shorter term. We do have the NAM and the HER in North America. If you go up to Europe, we have the AROME, which they're also higher resolution. The rapid refresh is, as it says, updates more often. The NAM isn't as high resolution, but still doing a pretty good job. So we have the high resolution models, and they do the NAM and the HER do extend into the Caribbean. I don't think they go the whole way. But the PWG and the PWE do cover just about the whole area in high res, especially around the islands. So yeah, another thing to think about is observations. I spend a lot of time looking at observations in PredictWind, and again, when we're talking about weather models and you're thinking which one's doing a good job, comparing observations to the model can be quite a nice way of seeing which model is doing a good job today. As I mentioned before, weather routing, we'll go and have a look at the weather routing, because I want to talk about weather routing, why we need it, why we have it, and also the wave routing. It's very, very important, and that also ties in with our departure planning. Picking the right weather window is as important as your routing once you're underway, or even more important, because if you get that window right, everything else falls into place. If you get that window wrong, you can, have a very unpleasant trip. And so, we always talk about sailing to the weather, not a schedule. And often we see it a lot here in New Zealand, where I am, people coming back from the Pacific Islands. And what happens is people will fly a crew in to, say, Fiji or Tonga. And because they've flown up there, they want to leave within a day or two. And they'll often, from Fiji to New Zealand can be a pretty nasty piece of water. And if they leave on to their schedule, often they'll end up getting smacked at some stage, and it can go bad. So getting that timing right when you depart is what this departure planning tool is all about. And it's a short-term thing. So that's your 1, 2, 3, 4 days, but you can keep rolling those periods through until you find a window you like. Local knowledge, has information about spots, dive spots, kiting spots, winging spots, anchorages, customs, all that sort of thing. Alerts. I use this if I want to go wing foiling. I'll have alerts set letting me know when it's windy enough for me to get up foiling, and it just means I can plan my life. Can be nice to be notified if you're in a particular anchorage, and you're not maybe paying, huge attention to the weather, but you can get alerts sent to you. You could set up an alert. If the breeze is going to come from, this, 180 to 270, I want to get alerted, because that means that the wind swung around is going to be coming into our anchorage. And yeah, I talked about models, how we choose models. We do have a validation tool where you can see which model is performing well where you are. I know that in Auckland at the moment, the PWG does an amazing job on the day and tomorrow. And it's the high resolution picking up the thermal breeze every day. It does a really good job of it. So yeah, we're back down to our apps and our maps. And as I mentioned before, SATCOMs, we do have all of that stuff there. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to flick over to the Predict Wind forecast website. Just started raining. And we're going to have a look at this and sort of how we would use some of the features in here. So this is the forecast website is the same as the Predict Wind app. So that's different to the offshore app, which we will also look at. But this is if you are fully connected and you don't plan on being disconnected, you use the Predict Wind app or the forecast website. So we do have all our sort of features of things in here. Wind maps, wave maps, currents. I should talk about tidal currents because that's also something new. Is we have just mapped the entire, 90% of the world's coastlines with tidal maps. So it's really cool. And especially on the east coast of the US, there's some, places where we have the 100-meter resolution tidal current modeling, which can make, for your passages, your day sails, can make a huge difference. And I'm thinking Long Island Sound, Chesapeake, etc. We have high resolution modeling in there, which is super cool. But yeah, so we have all these different forecast parameters here. And, when I was talking before about departure planning, I would come in here and I might look at the isobar map. I'll zoom out and I might be looking at my big picture stuff, and seeing what's coming in the next, 7 days or so, and looking at the big patterns as the start of my window. Is a big low going to roll up here? Is it going to be on the nose and whatnot? And I can see that in my departure planning tools, but you know, we still need to be looking at this big picture stuff. Excuse me, I'll just have a drink. And excuse me. And we can look at these maps, right? And we can glean a lot of big picture information from them. But what our focus is giving you tools to interpret them and understand them. And you can see when I come back to the start, I see all of these fronts and low pressures and other warnings pop up on my screen. And what they are is they are the GMDSS marine forecasts. So they are written by a meteorologist, and then we have a system that can read these forecasts and then turn them into graphics. And I'll show you why we've done that. If you've never looked at a GMDSS forecast, you're in for a treat. Because they look like this. And so for someone like me, this is just the feature that I've clicked on. It's actually highlighted what it is that I'm looking at, and that there's going to be thunderstorms and poor visibility, and for these different areas. But if you just look at just the text forecast, plotting and where these things out and understanding where they are is actually quite hard and time consuming. So this saves us a lot of time, and we can instantly click on and see what these features of the GMDSS forecast are. And the nice thing about it is it's written by the relevant Met area. I was just seeing if I had a location set up in the US, which was a bit remiss of me. I should. Anyway, wherever you are and you got your location set, you'll be able to see these, and you'll see as I scroll forward, it disappears. And the reason it disappears is that the information that we're showing is for now. And the GMDSS will talk about features in the future. And so we're actually working on adding the future features in there, but there's no point in scrolling forward and looking at the forecast here and seeing something that's talking about today. So that's, you know, something that we can look at for our big picture stuff. You know, we see here we have wind maps and gust maps. So a really important thing to know is that wind maps are average wind speeds, and gust maps are, as they say, our gusts. Often you will hear people say, oh, you know, the forecast, it said it was going to be 15 knots, and, you know, we had 25 knots. And that's really where the wind maps and the gust maps come in. You shouldn't just be looking at the averages. Always look at the gust maps, because then you get a picture of what's going on. And something else to think about there is, you know, if I were looking at the tables here and I could see, you know, averages of 15, and I saw gusts of 25, it's what we refer to as an indicator of an unstable weather. And so you'd actually get a warning come up along here. You'd have a warning. Have I got any warnings? No, it's summer. Oh yeah, here we go. So yeah, so we've got our gust warning because the gusts are 10%, 50% higher or whatever it is than the average. So sorry, it's actually 10 knots. If the difference is more than 10 knots, then that warning will come up. And so that's just an instability indicator. Cape maps, convective available potential energy, and we want to keep an eye on that because it's an indicator of thunderstorms. So we see rain and Cape together, and we'll look at that in the weather routing. We want to look at that. Wave maps, again, a really good thing to have a look at, especially around your anchorages. And we're going to talk about a bit more about anchorages when we look at the routing, because there's some tools in there that can actually help us with that, and looking at the different wave states coming in. I wanted to talk about currents. As I said, we've literally just done this. We've always had ocean currents, and that's what we still use when we're crossing the oceans. But you know, we can end up, you know, this piece of water here outside Auckland, you know, this here and here, that's where they sailed the America's Cup. And you know, I sail out there and my kids sail out there, and I know that this you know, these tidal currents can make a massive difference to the sea state. So being able to visualize what these, you know, any areas where there is higher levels of current, being able to see that is you know, a real game changer. Like if I look here, the Rangitoto Channel, you know, 0.7 of a knot. If I have a southwesterly wind, which is one of the really common directions here, pushing out across here, I know that I've got a wind against current situation, and it's going to be pretty choppy. Even if it's 12 knots of breeze and I've got a knot of current going the other way, really changes my my sea state. So yeah, have a look at that if you haven't. It's really, really cool. And you know, we've done, as I say, we've done 90% of the world's coastline. So all of the US has been done, Caribbean, and where there is more current, there will be high resolution modeling, so more granular. So you see here, we're looking at up here, we're looking at 100-meter resolution, and that you know, I can change that resolution and look at the lower resolutions. But yeah, the 400-meter is basically will cover all of the coastlines in the world, and until we get into the ocean currents, then the ocean currents take over. So probably looked at that enough. As I say, we do have the validation tool if you want to look at that. Yeah, I mentioned observations, but what we want to talk about is I want to go and have a look at weather routing. Since we did this, I would have talked to Salty Dog last year. I don't know whether we had our power routing separated out. So we've actually changed our powerboat routing algorithm. So if you're a powerboater, we have certainly catered more for powerboaters in that routing. And it's worth having a look. I know that most of you are sailors, so we're going to talk about the sail routing. But if you are a powerboater, it can make a big difference to your planning and your passages, and having a nicer passage. And with the power routing, I would be looking at the departure planning a lot. You know, your window is not more critical than sailing, but still very important. You know, the getting that window right for your power planning is, because you're going to get there in a much shorter period of time, it's super critical. Actually, we'll just stay in here, and because regardless of where we are, we want to set up our polars, whether we're doing the weather routing and the departure planning uses the same algorithm. And so both of them need to know how fast our boat goes. And so, as I mentioned before, when we were looking at the data hub can update your polar, and you will put a base polar in here first. So you might grab one of these predefined polar, and you will then have it plugged into your data hub and turned on, and the data hub will send the information to our servers, and it will look at how you sail your boat. It's very, very clever. The reason it's called an AI polar is that there's some really smart stuff going on with it. Can understand whether you're sailing or not. So it'll know when you're motoring, and it'll discard information that is not relevant to your polar. Yeah, someone a lot smarter than me made that. So it's super cool. And I would, you know, if you have a data hub, or you're thinking of getting a data hub, use the AI polar. It's awesome. So if we don't, we can come in here to this predefined list and set up our polar. You know, choose our boat type. If your boat type is not in here, you can choose one that you know is similar to yours, boat speed wise, and you start from there. If I press that copy to advanced polar button, and then I click on this advanced tab, I mentioned before about what a polar table looks like, and you can see here wind speed is down here. Then we have our 2 blank columns, and then we have true wind angle, and then we have the boat speed going down, and you can see we come across and we've got true wind angle, boat speed for each of these wind speeds. And so you can adjust these numbers, the boat speed numbers, or you can change the true wind angle numbers. You can take rows and columns out. But coming to grips with this and having a look at it is pretty important, because you want this to match how you sail. So really important to get that working. And if I come down here, and this is, I mean, I've talked about polars a lot in the past, and we do have a lot of information about polars on our in our help center, and our help centers, our support staff can help you with this stuff. If you're unsure, they will help you out. That's what they're there for. They're very experienced sailors. People like Kieran that have sailed around the world multiple times. They know what they're talking about. They know what it's like to be out there, and so they can be very helpful to you. So we do have a motoring option in here, and so you can turn that on or off, and we can turn that on or off in the offshore app. And so that's just if your boat speed falls down below a certain speed in the routing, it will then motor you. And then we have this polar speed adjustment, and that's just a broad tool that you can actually bring all those numbers down. And you'll see here we have upwind, downwind, and then we have at night. So we have at night because in the hours of darkness, you might reduce your sail and just sail more conservatively. It's harder to sail at night, to sail the boat to its as well as you can. And so we have that at night setting that you can put in there. Tack and jibe penalties. It's more of a racing feature, but if you do think it's tacking you too much, you can turn these numbers up, and it will the router will tack you less. So what I really want to talk about in here, because this is an amazing feature that we did have last year and is just really, really awesome. I think it's almost changed the way that we look at weather routing and how people use this. The wave polar and the router knowing how your boat is going to react in the waves. And so when I say that, I mean the wind wave, the primary swell, the secondary swell, and the tertiary swell. We are using all of those parameters. We create a basic 3D model of your boat. That's why we need to put our displacement, our waterline length, our beam, and our draft, our hull draft. And we can change in here whether we're a monohull catamaran. We're about to put trimarans in there and power cats as well. So it creates that 3D model. If I come in here, and you'll see, it explains what those basic parameters are. And then the router then knows what kind of boat you have. Roughly, this has this rough 3D model of it. And then when we run your route, we can give you those outputs. Route defaults. So our depth. So that's using a seafloor contour from CMAP, and it will not route you into those shallow areas. It's not a nav tool. It's about giving you more accurate routes. So you probably hear, I've mentioned that quite a few times about getting more accurate routes. And so all of these features that we have in the routing there are about giving you more accurate routes. Weather routing is no longer, the most basic thing you could do is you could look at a weather map and you could go, I go 6.5 knots, and so I'll be about here, and then I'll be about here, and I'll be about here. And those sorts of generalizations lead to huge inaccuracies in 3 days' time. So you want to know, am I going to be in front of the system? Am I going to be behind the system? Where's that front? When are we going to hit the front? When are we going to hit the Gulf Stream? All of those things. That's why we're putting all this effort into our polars, the wave polar. The wave polar will speed up and slow down your boat, whether if it's pushing, if the waves are pushing you, or whether whether you're banging into it. So that's the reason that we have all of these different features to put into your routing, and getting those polars accurate, and having this wave polar, and how that you're knowing what your boat is. These route defaults. I mean, obviously, if it's bouncing you off the land, that's not what you do in reality. And there's areas that you might even want to change that to 10 meters because you don't want it to put you into shoal areas or whatever. And you can also put boundaries in the routing to cut those areas off as well. So we can change which ocean currents model the router is using. And sometimes it's interesting to have a look at that, and we can also look at the ocean currents as well when we run our routing. So I'm happy with how I've set all this up. And over here is my polar curve. And you'll see as I go into each one of those, it highlights each column that it relates to. If that's a way that you want to look at it. You can import a polar if you have one from however whether you've got one from your designer or whatever, or you've created your own one, and you can also export it. So we've got all those parameters set up, and you'll see here forecast models. We're in the departure planning, and so we choose the 4 models we are going to use, and because we're going offshore and we're looking into the future, we're going to use the ECMWF, the GFS, SPIRE, and the UKMO. And the reason we're going to use them, as I mentioned before, the PWG and the PWE, their superpower is short term. We're looking long term. So we are going to use these global models. ECMWF is the #1 weather model in the world for accuracy, and it does very well long term. We've also we did a study and found that the SPIRE does very well offshore as well. Of course, the GFS is the free, and so from NOAA, and is a good model, and they work on it a lot. And that's the reason you see it everywhere, is that it's free. And UKMO is considered the #2 global model in the world from a Met agency. And so, it has a deserved place in there. So let's go over to our planning, and we have our start and finish waypoint set. And if I wanted to, I could change my time zones. I'm not in Australia. I think I'm right there. And I can change my, because we're in sail planning, I can change my departure spaces. So if I was doing a day trip, I might want to work out whether it's better to leave in the morning or the afternoon. If I was doing a short passage. And so I can change that to 2 hours apart. Is it better to leave now, or is it better to leave after lunch? Because we're looking at a big passage, we're going to put it at 24-hour intervals. And we'll start it now. I could put that in the future as well. And so I could say, oh well, I'm not actually going to leave, first time I would be leaving would be tomorrow. So I could change that to tomorrow. Anyway, we're on now. So let's click on download. Just for my waypoints here, there's quite a few ways that you can change those waypoints. You can add them in here manually. If I clicked on that, it would take it to where my the GPS on my device, obviously on my laptop, so my laptop doesn't have GPS. If I was connected to a data hub, I can have that going in. That's only just been done. It would put my little dot on the screen for me. So let's click on download, and it will calculate our route, and then we can talk about some of our routing outputs, and the departure planning outputs. Just have a quick drink. So this is you'll see there it says calculating route, and you might be like, oh, it's taking a while, and that it's doing billions of calculations. So it'll explore every possible avenue and calculate whether that's the right route before it comes to the optimal route. And you'll see there that we've got some warnings have been thrown up and whatnot. So, you know, that's interesting. And we'll look at what they are. And yeah, what I wanted to say about the calculations. So whichever connection type you're on, and whether you're using the offshore app or whether you're using the web here, it calculates your route on our servers. And so it is using the highest resolution data it can get for everything. It's using tidal currents, it's using ocean currents, it's using you know, the different weather models, and the sea states, and it's calculating all that information together, and it's using the highest resolution data it can get. And so that, you know, especially coastal, that really matters, but even offshore, you know, having that ECMWF 14K wave data to calculate your vertical acceleration and your roll and boat slamming is really important. So we are in the sail planning, departure planning tool, and we've got these warnings here, and I can actually click on them, and it's warning me about the roll and vertical acceleration. Not surprising, right? I mean, look at this. You know, it looks like we've got a pretty strong. You know, we're on wind here, so we're not on gust. We've got 20, 24 knots, 27, 29 knots average wind speed. So I'm not surprised that we've got those warnings coming up, but we've just blindly walked in here. So let's go over to the tables, because this is actually really where we would look at this tool. And you'll see here, we've got our passage time, and, you know, a whole lot of things here. Maximum wind speed knots, but maximum gust is, you know, 42 knots on that departure time. And even here, so day 4 is not quite so nasty, sort of wind speed wise, but, you know, the amount of time upwind reaching for each of these departure times, you know, the time and the different wind speeds, and then our wave. And then what I really want to look at is our time, so this is where our wave modeling comes in. I'll just move my zoom controls there. So the time in less than 4 degrees roll is, you know, 50 to 70, you know, it's pretty, you know, it's not all the time. And then the time in over 4 degrees. And so this is RMS. So the root means square. Don't worry too much about what that is, but basically 4 is the threshold. And if we're getting up to 4 or above 4, it can get pretty nasty. And so this is, you know, looking at this, I wouldn't want to really, if I'm going cruising, I wouldn't really want to take any of these departure times on, because I'm going to be getting thrown around a lot, you know, 80% of the time. It's horrendous. And then I come down here to my vertical acceleration. So that's lifting. This is the up and down. And again, you know, more than a third of the journey on these two, and most of the journey on these two. And so this is, you know, with your roll, it's hard to get around, and your vertical acceleration. I've never been seasick myself, but I'm told that you can make anyone seasick. And so, yeah, your vertical acceleration there that is what generally makes people seasick. We don't have any boat slamming, which is good. And then you can see there our polar influence on the waves of how they're influencing our polar. So they're actually making a big difference to our polar. So I wouldn't go on any of, just quickly look at this. I wouldn't go on any of these departure times. They don't look very kind to me. And so I wouldn't leave on any of those. But if I did want to leave on one of them, I could come over here to my sail routing. And so once I'd chosen the time I was going to depart, I would come over here and set my time and, you know, come in here, but let's go to the calendar. Well, let's just put it for the 30th and download my route. Why does it not like my, why doesn't it like it? Okay. Whatever. Let's just go back to now. I don't know what I did wrong there. So let's run our route. And so if we had chosen one of our departure times, we would then come and run our weather routing. And so the reason that we do that is the weather routing actually gives us a lot more information on the actual route. And so then we can look at when, you know, where this nasty weather is, or where, you know, is there stuff that we want to avoid. When we're underway, how we would use this is if we ran our route while we're on passage, you might slow down to avoid a system, or speed up, or, you know, make a real effort to get ahead of something, and do all that sort of thing. And you can see here that we do have all of our 6 models routes have run now, and we can go through all of the models down here, and look at all the different models, look at the different parameters. But, you know, first of all, I would actually go and look at the tables and the graph. And so I realize I'm sort of time's marching on, so I'll speed up a bit here, and I'll cover off two birds with one stone here. In the offshore app, we can actually run we can run our weather routing and our departure planning as well, and we can actually run a destination forecast, and that will actually give us this combined wind, wave, and swell. So if we look here, well, there's 2 ways we can do it. We can look at it here in the graphs. I quite like the graphs, and this will show us also. Let's go down here first. This will show us our roll. So there's our limit there, 4. So we're still spending a lot of time above that 4. So that's not good. This is really high. If we saw that in our route when we're underway, we would make an effort to, you know, we might heave to let it go in front of us, and look at that. And this is something that I would be critically aware of myself. I wouldn't be relying on a external weather router for this stuff, because they don't always see these things, because this tool is very clever what it's doing, and unless they're using it, they're probably not going to be as acutely aware of the different wave states. And same with our vertical acceleration, it is super high and no slamming. And what I was looking at with the wave, well, let's look at the wave direction. And so you see here, we're talking about the combined wind, wave, and swell. And so that all looks fine, right? But the reason there's, you know, there'll be something in here, and I haven't looked at this. So there's our wind wave, right? They're all pretty in line with the wind, because the wind was somewhat in line there. And then we look at our primary swell, and you see here our primary swell is actually somewhat different direction. Our secondary swell, slight, you know, somewhat lined up with the primary. And then if there's tertiary swell, which there is in this instance, so those 3 swell states aren't super line, a somewhat similar direction. They could have different period, but they are at odds with the wind wave. So that's gonna create an odd motion on the boat, and probably some of the reason that we're seeing that roll in vertical acceleration. And, you know, the wave period is also good to look at. And if I come over here into the wave, and I can see the different parameters, and in a table format here. And so you can see the different directions, the periods, and their heights. And so, yeah, that's worth having a look at. Oh, and so yes, my point on this as well is that you could use this for your anchorages. You could have this information and see the different periods and swell states coming into an anchorage. You might just look at the wind and go, yes, this anchorage looks sweet. And then all of a sudden you've been there for 6 hours and you're all, you've got the barbecue on and you've caught some fish or whatever, and then all of a sudden the swell rolls in, and that will show up in here. And I'll stop sharing this screen and I will share the offshore app, which I really haven't talked about as much as I wanted to, but here we are. So I've flicked over to the offshore app. So as I said at the start, this is what I would recommend if you want to save data offline, use the offshore app. You can use it on a Mac, a PC, an iPad, an iPhone, an Android phone, your Samsung or whatever you've got, a tablet. So it works on most common platforms. And you just need the one account and you can use it on those different devices. But this is actually for an anchorage, and we can see those different the wind wave, the primary swell, secondary swell, tertiary swell. I think it is. I'm not, maybe I ran a route here, but yeah, I did run a route. But you'll see here, it looks much like what we were just looking at, but we are in the offshore app. And when I download all of this data, it stays here. So I can close, I did that an hour or hour and a half ago, and I've just come back to it and it's all still there. So all my parameters that I've downloaded are still here. My gust, my cape, they're all sitting in there. I have my GMDSS, my observations, ocean data. I don't think I downloaded any. Oh, yes, I did. So I have my ocean data in there. So this is the HICOM model. You'll see here it says the GRIB is 17 hours old. That's fine because ocean data doesn't change as fast as our atmospheric data. And so in here, you will see why this is so super critical to have for your routing, and being able to see this is, in my mind, essential. Because yes, we have the Gulf Stream, but we also have a myriad of eddies and back eddies, and it's some pretty crazy stuff going on there. So knowing what you're going to get there, and we can update this as we go. Let's say we've sailed to here, and we can update that and know exactly where we're going to be and when. And so this is why it's so critical, what I was talking about before with our polars and all the wave routing and that sort of thing, knowing how our boat's going to be, where we're going to be, and then updating ourselves in these with this routing. So every time our models update, we update our routing. And in here we can select all our parameters. If you play with this a bit, you'll work out what it is that you want. If you are using a Go or Exec, you can just click on that button there, use offshore optimized settings. If you don't, you hadn't used it before, that's a good place to start. And we can change a bunch of different stuff in here. I'll just cancel that and I will stop sharing, and I will ask Kieran if there is any particular questions that people want me to talk about, or Alex even.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. This has been really useful. Let's take a look at the chat. I know Kieran's been
There was,
Go ahead,
yeah, I
Kieran.
think I answered most things. I think one thing, somebody asked if you could show the alerts feature in the PredictWind website, how to set an alert. But other than that, I think I've answered everything.
Okay, cool. Yep, I can.
And can you also show us how you set up to look at the waves in a close to an anchorage?
Okay, let's do that first.
Okay.
So I've gone back to the offshore app, and what we are looking at here and we're actually going to change the Predict Wind app. And the Predict Wind app is, it's actually something we've been doing for a while. It's actually going to show you for that spot location. It's going to show you the primary, the wind wave, the primary, secondary, tertiary swell for that particular spot. A way that you can do it in the offshore app is if I came over here and I click on download and I click on that destination forecast only, and what it's doing there is it's actually going to give me information for my red dot. And so it's done that now. And so then now I'm only getting information for that one spot. So you'll see here, I can see my combined wind wave and swell, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And so that where my red dot is, you know, assuming I've got it set for my anchorage, maybe not, I look a bit far out to sea there. But we can, so the wave's just going to be showing us if I go wave and go, sorry, I need to move my zoom controls. When I go my ECMWF, it's showing me the combined wind wave and swell. You know, and that's looks like it's mainly being driven by the wind. But if I come in, if I go back to my tables, I press my zoom controls. No, there we go. You can see that there's my wind wave direction and then my primary swell are different. And my secondary swell is different. So I've got a few things going on there. And so it can at least give me some ideas of what's going on for that. And then and in time as well, you know, like, you know, we've got 1300, 1600, 900. So we can see through the night, is that changing or is it not? And that sort of thing. And we can look at this in the graphs as well. So I was saying to Alex that we should probably do a bit more development on a tool around this. But you can see that information now. But yeah, actually being able to have it all overlaid in a more visual way, I think would be really nice. So I'll stop sharing that and I will talk about and I'll go away and I'll come back to you on that one, Alex. And I will share my screen again. Back to Google. So how do we set alerts? And so it should be under tools. And if I come down here, so I've gone to tools. So whether you're in the Predict Wind app or the Predict Wind website, I can come down here to forecast alerts. And so just to be clear, this is location specific. So I'm set up at Murray's Bay, which is where I spend nearly every afternoon with my kids sailing. And I can set up an alert here. So I can set it up for how far in advance and for each day. So if I wanted to set it up on Monday, I'm not going to set this. Well, yeah, I can set it up. I'll do 9 a.m. to, I don't know, midday. And then, you know, I can have it for all the days and then how far in advance it's going to look. And each day it will look at this, and I can set that up there for the time. And then I come down here and what parameters do I want to be alerted for? So I want to be alerted for when it's 15 to, I don't know, 35 knots. And from for that location, 0 to 45. And I can put the gusts in there, and I can actually have rain set up, you know, wave period, tide height, etc. And then I just save that, and I will be alerted to those conditions from now on, which I'm sure will really annoy me at some stage tomorrow morning.
Nick,
during daylight hours.
How are the alerts sent to you? Is it by email or text?
You can set it up to do both. You can, yeah. So you can get in-app. If I do it in my app, because I'm on the website, if I do it in the app, I can get an in-app alert. So a push notification to my phone, or it will be an email alert. This will send me an email alert. Cool.
Cool, thank you. That was it from my end.
Cool.
Okay, anybody have any other questions? Well, once again, this has been really very, very informative, and the tool just gets more and more, I guess, advanced over time. So I don't think I had any other questions.
It's cool. If people do have questions, like please reach out to our support team. Whether you're on, wanting to learn about what it could do, how it could work for you. Just to get a bit of one-on-one, reach out to them. They're great people and very knowledgeable, and really there to help you. It's there's no dumb questions. If there's something that you don't know, just ask. It's
And-
really what they're there for.
And if we want to get a data hub, they can help us with the setup, I assume.
Yes, 100%. Yep.
Great.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to stop the recording.